We'll give another 1 minute and we get started. So, Tarisan, should we get started?
I think so.
All right. Okay, welcome everyone. You're in the IETF 112 DMM working group session. Myself, Sri Gandavalli, and my co-chair, Satoru, is here. Okay, a few things before we get started. So by attending this meeting, you're generally agreeing to follow the IETF rules and other considerations. So this slide is about the IPR considerations. And note well, again, as I said, by attending this meeting, you're confirming that you'll follow the IETF rules and regulations. These are listed in this guides. A few things. For note taker, Pablo has agreed to be the note taker. Pablo, thank you so much. And a quick update on the working group documents. We have currently 3 documents that are on the working group, which were adopted as working group documents. One is the user plane protocol and architecture analysis, and the segment routing IPv6 for mobile user plane, and mobility aware transport network slicing for 5G. So, a quick update. We have not seen much progress on the first one between the last meeting and this meeting. So I think we need a new revision to see where we are, right? But right now, at this point, not much progress on this document. On segment routing for IPv6, we issued a last call, but there have been few concerns. There have been active discussions. There are a number of comments, like, I think a few things. After the working group call closed, we did not, send any text, any email on the outcome of that call. We thought, because there were a few comments, we thought we'll let the authors and those reviewers settle those, discuss offline and converge on what the changes should be. So as we speak, the authors, Satoru-san and others, are actively in touch with the reviewers. Joel, is one of the reviewer who gave some specific comments, right? Our plan is to really, make sure the authors and the reviewers, agree upon something in the next, 1 month, 1.5 months, and do a quick last call again in January. That's the plan. So, but right now, to give an update, the LC from the last thing did not, we did not feel we are ready to take it forward, right? There are few concerns. There is most of the issues are addressed, but still there are few issues. We want those issues to be addressed. As part of the update today, the authors are going to, talk about the specific issues. What are the blocking comments which are not? We'll let them present, give the status on that. I have also spoken to our area director Eric on this document. So he's also, watching the threads carefully. So as I said, our plan is to truly, make sure all the issues are resolved, and we absolutely want to move forward in January. That's the plan. Now, on the next document, mobility over transport network slicing. This is today. We have presentation. This was adopted recently. So at this point, we don't have much to talk about this, but I think we do want some discussions in the mailing list on this document. But we'll hear more from John on this, on the progress of this document. Next submission is there's a new submission between the last and IETF meeting and this one. This is a SRv6 mobile user plane architecture. So this is an individual submission. It's no discussions yet. Today we are going to hear from the authors, as what they want to, on the proposal. With that, I think I'll pause for a second and see if there are any other. So the agenda for today is mainly 3 presentations. One from John, from Pablo, another from Satoru. So 2 working documents, and the third one the individual ID. So there is one other document that is missing. As I said, the other working group document, the authors haven't asked for a slot yet. We are going to reach out to the authors and see what's going on that document. But this is the status as of today. Now I'll pause here and see if there are any comments. Otherwise, we'll go with the presentations. All right. I believe there's nobody in the queue. I'll let our first presenter, John, will you be able to present your slides using your slide deck? Okay, let me, okay.
Thanks, Sri. I've asked for permission to.
Hello.
Needs to grant him permission to share the content.
Yeah, I did actually. I did grant, John.
You need to click on his grant permission on him.
Yes, I did.
Okay, that's weird. You may need to stop sharing first.
Oh, because I need to stop sharing. Sorry about that. All right. Okay, got it. Okay.
Can you?
Got it. John, can you make the request again, please? Okay, you should have it now. Sorry.
Go.
Yes, we can see your slides. This is who's sharing.
By the way, Sri, can you hear me or?
John, are you sharing the right slides?
Maybe I'm not.
You're sharing. What I see is SRv6 mobile user plane architecture for DMM. That's what I see.
I don't even have that open, so that is strange.
Satoru, any comments? What do you guys see?
Maybe I'll share my screen.
Who is sharing? All right.
If that's easier. Is that better?
Yeah. I can't figure this out.
Well, I've asked for permission to share the screen. Okay.
Yeah, I keep saying grant, but I'm not. Is anybody? See, we are not sharing anything.
We can see the SRv6 mobile user plane architecture for DMM slides at the moment.
We are not sharing. I'm not sharing anything. Satoru-san, can you try from your side? Because
John, you may need to stop sharing first, and then, because you had requested share, you may need to stop sharing the other and then request share your content directly.
I think John has a different desktop. I think.
So let me cancel my request and ask again.
Okay.
Yeah,
I think John.
Yes.
I think you're getting it now. Yeah.
And I'm going to share my screen.
Yes.
Let me put it into presentation mode.
See plenty of windows. Yeah. Okay.
This is good. Okay.
This is good. Please continue.
Okay. Good morning and or good evening to you all, and sorry about the time to take up to set this up, but thanks for attending all of this. And let me start with saying what we're doing in this draft in terms of the updates. Um, these are mostly updates based on comments that we've got during the adoption call, and also from feedback from related aspects in, for example, the routing working group and so on. So I've organized it into 4 areas. One is a very simple clarification of the architecture section. The second one is a little more substantial. It's talking about the transport endpoint and its relation to the 3GPP 28541 endpoints. The third one is related mainly to comments that we got during and before the working group and so on. So that's the third one. And then we have a few miscellaneous changes that's to make sure that we are aligning with the T's working group draft. Those are not really, I don't have any slides to discuss, but we've made changes in the draft. So I'll go on to the first one and clarify. This is a very simple change. So I'll just walk through the diagram. I mean, or rather, let me just say the change that we made is in section 2 to add that this architecture diagram and is provided here for information. And we're not making any changes to the architecture per se. It's exactly what's in 3GPP, the G node B DU and the CU on the radio side. You can see over here. And then the F1U, which is the equal to the user plane for in 3GPP, the G node B CU and the UPF, all bounded via the N3 or the N9 connections. All of that is exactly what is in 3GPP. We're making no changes to it. What we're putting in this diagram is a clarification on how we're going to use it in terms of handling the slicing across these F1U or N3 and N9. And I think that's the clarification we provided. Going on to the second change, this is a little more detailed, so I'll walk through it in as much as we can. So this change is associating the text in our document with some of the details in 28541, which is a network resource model management system network resource model in 3GPP. So I've copied a small diagram from 28541, which describes the transport endpoints as logic interface IDs, and there's a list of them, and how it relates to the points in this draft is that there are these user plane network functions, which could be the G node B CU, I mean G node B DU or the UPF, and this interface ID is what is then used for forwarding, I mean, or setting up the classifying and setting up the slice. And that is clarified in 3 areas in the document. There's in the abstract, we've added some text to that. In the introduction section, it refers to the 28541. And then later on in section 2.5 of MTNCID in the data packet, we've again clarified how this is being used. So if there's any questions on this, I can take it, or I'll move on to the next point. So on the MTNCID per traffic class and tenant, I mean, there was some discussion on this. There were some questions on, how this is related to path and aspects like that. This was even before the, I think, working group adoption. We had made some changes, but in this one, the authors have worked to really remove all of the aspects related to tying it to a path. And really what we now have are traffic classes and tenants. And you can see here that I mean, I've just copied the text from 2 with the changes. We've introduced the notion of the tenants in this, and the notion that if there are T traffic classes and C tenants, then it's a function of T by C in a fully meshed networks, and that there is enough space to represent that if we use an identifier of 16 bits. Also, we removed all the text associating a transport slice ID to a path in the network. Those are the.
So John, if I may ask a clarifying question here, right? So the slice now, it's no longer about 2 endpoints, a logical path between 2 endpoints, but you're saying it's a set of nodes on the transport path.
The
Is
slice,
that the change?
Yeah, sure.
Can you
the
clarify?
Mapping of the slice is between the 2 endpoints, as we clarify here. The point is that the identity, I mean, associating that identity is with respect to a tenant that's using it. So I think this aligns, more with what's been happening in the IETF. And does that answer your question? Or what I mean is that, okay, let me.
So the tenant in this context is what? In the IETF context, is the entity that's controlling the transport path, or is it? Can you clarify on that?
Sorry, I somehow missed the first part. What is the entity that?
The tenant in this context,
yes, okay.
right? Where do you define that?
Let me just, maybe I'll use just one of these. The tenant in this case is the one that is requesting these services. So if you have multiple tenants, then they would have different slice identifiers.
Okay.
Right. And so, in other words, if it is to put the other part, that was more tricky and that was there before, and was tying it to a path. So if it's the same tenant across different paths, it may still use the same identifier, and it can be resolved by using the combination of an identifier and where this is originating or destined for. I hope that clarifies it.
Okay, thank you.
So thanks, Sri. I think this was these two are perhaps the more substantial changes in the text, and the others are relatively minor. So that's actually all that we have for this draft. Yeah, I think that's all. Any comments or suggestions to update? We'd be happy to take them now or on the mailing list.
Yeah, thank you, John. Any questions, comments? There is nobody in the queue. So John, are we requiring any changes on the N4 interface for this? Or
yeah.
Can you?
Right. No, we're not requiring any changes in the N4. So I'll use this figure again to clarify that. So what's happening is, so this 28541 is some interface in the management system, which will populate these endpoints. So it may be VLAN, MPLS segment, UDP port. So they're all identified in this draft, and that will be associated in this endpoint. Then how that is mapped is via this interface. I mean, how this is populated. So based on where this is destined or originating from, and the other classification, it will use this mapping that is in here, this endpoint transport mapping, and that will be used to classify the slice and other information in this transport network. So the short answer to your question is there is no change to the SMF or the interface between the SMF and the UPF at all.
Yeah. Good to hear that, John. So I think just to clarify on the overall scope, we are not truly defining on the transport side, we are not introducing the concept of a slice, right? But it's just more of a mapping. We are giving an identifier to a particular transport slice. We assume that transport other working groups would create that. What we are doing is we are associating that slice to a session in the mobility context.
Absolutely.
Is that
yes, Sri, thank you. That's a very good abstraction.
Yeah, because one of the concerns at the time of adoption, we did say that is like, we don't want to step on other working groups. There is a gap here because transport area is already working on a bunch of stuff. In the mobility area, we are doing a bunch of things in the session area, in the session management. It's just a mapping of the two. As long as the scope is within, stays within that, we are perfectly fine. And thank you, John. Eric was on, I believe he was trying to say something. Eric Klein.
I think you actually asked my question. It was about whether or not there are any actual modifications required to the elements, to any element that was implementing N2 or N4.
No changes to N2 or N4. The only changes we can see is that already in 28541, these are the VLAN, MPLS, and segment information already there. I mean, we're talking about, as Sri mentioned, the association between the way we populate a slice in the transport network to that of the slice in the mobile network. So this is a mapping or an association between them.
Mm-hmm. I'll leave it to the chairs. I assume you guys are following the other slice work, as you were saying, Sri, and other working groups. There's a fair amount of other slice things going on. And I know that there's a VTN ID draft in 6man about trying to have a network slice ID. So I don't know if speak up, I guess, is what I'm saying. If you think there ought to be some kind of a multi-working group session where we talk about slice things across all the groups that are relevant. I don't know if that's a good idea or not, but
at some point we need to make sure this aligns with the rest of the work that's happening in other groups. Eric, I think the key thing is currently this document, whatever this document is doing is like, it's something unique which others are not focusing here. It's mostly about how we manage how we create an association between a session and a transport slice. Yes. I think as long as we stay in that area, we are okay. And the slices can be of, other groups can, come out with different identifiers and all of that. We should be able to, we are not creating a new ID, but we are just using one of the ID that other group creates, and we are binding it to a session. So if we stay in that, I think we are perfectly fine. But one thing, John, I think the draft need to be a little bit, as to, cover, reflect these points. Currently, it's all over the place, but if somebody reads it, they may be confused. They might be thinking you guys are defining a new slice and all of that. So I would suggest you and other authors, please, review the text again and make sure that it comes
Thanks,
out.
Ray. I think we somewhat agree. I think as authors, we didn't get the time at this time to update it, but I think we feel the need that we should focus this draft to deliver something of value that can be used in setting up these mobile slices, and only that. With respect to Eric's comments, I think not me, but the other authors or some of the other authors are looking at the T's work, and we have tried to align the text in here or even reference them. I'm not sure that any of us are tracking the 6man specifically for slices, but we'll take that as an action to look at. But as Sri mentioned, I think the focus here is obviously to do the mapping and to a mobile session that gets established and reestablished as a user moves. And so that's sort of more specific to the mobile environment, and we'll try to stick to only that.
Okay. So on this, I think one final comment on this, John. I think if you can refer, make sure track all the other work that's happening, other groups, add some informative resources if it makes sense, references, right? And so that way we can make sure that the identifiers that you're referring to, or we are not ignoring any. We are rather, it's we are neutral to any of the types, right? I think that's
okay.
last comment. Yeah, I think to Eric's last comment, at some point we may have to get this reviewed by other working groups as well, John. So I think we are not ready yet, but let's clean up, and at some point, as Eric is suggesting, we may have to do that.
Sure, I've taken these notes, and yeah, I'll definitely work with the other authors to update this. Thank you.
Okay. I see Uma. Uma, please. I see you in the queue.
Had one comment to what Eric and you were saying, right? So we are following the TEAS working group, what they're trying to do. And as during the working group adoption, we made sure that we referred, and because there's a huge discussion across the IETF, like, centralized at TEAS for the terminology, because there's a lot of discussion before the WAFs and all that happened. So we wanted to align, we want to be the same page with the terminology at least, and also some of the things we mapped to the TEAS stuff. So we referred explicitly during the working group adoption based on the comments. So apart from that, as the part of the neutral, being neutral, yes, we are neutral. That's one of the reasons when in IETF 105, when Eric said that MT and CID, we don't want to put that into the data plane directly, right? So because we need to go touch L2, layer 2, IPv4, IPv6, and SRMPLS, everything. That's why we took the neutral approach. MT and CID we encoded into the UDP ports. But people further, once that information is given to the IP networks, then further they can put encode VTN IDs, what Eric is mentioning in 6-man, or they can do all sorts of IDs in TEAS, whatever they're trying to do, they can do it. But for us, end to end, we are neutral. That's why we backtracked and we didn't put MT and CD all over the place in all data planes actually. So this is the IETF 105 discussion captures that. So we're pretty neutral in this here. Thanks.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. I'll just repeat my offer. If you think that there's if you're satisfied with the current cross working group awareness, then great. And if not, then let me know, and I can try to talk to other ADs, and we can figure out how to do some multi-working group kind of a session.
Sure. And one more question, one more thing, Sri. I think this is one of the routing ADs pointed to me offline messages. It was not linked to the individual draft. I think there's some IPR concerns, so I just requested an administrative action from your side. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Thanks.
So yeah, Eric, I'm making notes on this on the multi cross group coordination thing. I think once we'll let the authors work on this a bit more, and at some point we'll do that review. Yeah. Okay. With that, thank you, John and others. And
thanks,
now
I forgot to turn my video on, but nice to see you all. And I'll get back to you.
Great to see you again. Yeah. So next presentation is Pablo SRv6 mobile user plane. This is Pablo. Please, I think in your presentation, please give an update on on all the feedback that you got as part of the LC. Please identify specific blocking comments, right? And what you guys have, what you as authors have done for resolving those specific comments, right? So again, as I said, the goal is to really, this draft has been sitting in the working group for a long time. We need to close this, we need to move forward. So we want to, I'd like to see some progress by January. So please, in your presentation, please give an update on please cover these aspects. Okay.
Can you see the slides, Sri?
Yes, please. Pablo, yes, yeah.
Okay, so many thanks. This is Pablo on behalf of the rest of the co-authors. Many thanks, Esri, for the introduction, and I'll try to cover the points that you have highlighted. Okay. So as a brief reminder, so this document went into working group last call on April this year on revision 11th. We had a good participation with many comments, so really thank you to everyone who has reviewed, and many thanks as well for Eric that that actually also posted the working group last call to Spring as well. And so during the working group last call, we have issued several updates. So actually we're on revision 17 with to address the comments from the reviewers. And there have been many editorial points as well as technical comments, which I think has been very positive. Okay. There are still, I believe, a couple of items that we should look at before we conclude the adoption. So there is one email thread that I will discuss later, and another point on the relationship of this work with other items. And so basically on the next slides, what I will do is I will try to highlight these points. Okay. So the first comment, and this is in chronological order. So the one of the first relevant comments that we got, it was actually from Joel Harper, and it was related to the relationship of this work with 3GPP. I've put in there the email link, the URL for the email from Joel. But if I'm not mistaken, I think that Joel's point is that he believes there is a conflict in between three sections of this draft with work that is being defined in 3GPP. The authors have quite a different point of view, because what we believe is that we are defining the tool or the data plane, and this data plane can be used by any other entity or SDO, such as, for example, the 3GPP. So basically, we are not trying to deprecate GDPU, which is owned by 3GPP. But Joel still feels that there is a conflict, and this is one of the outstanding items that we should discuss and that we should resolve. There have been a few more comments, so we got quite a bunch of editorial changes from Dirk, and actually it was very nice that they gave us the diff, so we actually applied it. We also had discussion with John on terminology, particularly on the L2 adjacency, which we also resolved. Sridhar also actually asked us whether this draft should also cover the X2 and the F1U interface considerations. Okay. So basically, the way that we resolve that is not covered in this draft. We believe it is out of the scope of this draft, but it is covered in the draft Murakami DMM user play message encoding. So we added a reference to that draft. And then there have been quite an extensive email exchange with Jeff, which has been really good. And this has been editorial points and clarifications throughout all of text and examples. Jeff's point, the technical points, he had a lot of comments on the relationship in between the traditional and the enhanced modes, and whether they could be merged or not. We also had a lot of clarifications on the scalability concerns, the scalability considerations that we have on the draft. Then there have been a lot of discussion on the addressing. And actually this is because in the examples that we use throughout the draft, we are using other things like U1 TID, which is not a correct IPv6 address in my opinion. So we are trying to see how we tackle that. And maybe I think that the most straightforward option would be to just use the documentation IPv6 block. And then we have an ongoing email thread with Jeff that is evolving quite slowly on both of our sides. But it's progressing quite good. And I believe that Jeff just sent his last email 1 hour before this meeting. So I don't know what was the content of Jeff's email, but we are making quite a good progress with Jeff. So all in all, I think that so basically, I think that we will be in pretty good shape for all of the comments. I think the major point that will be outstanding, it will be the comment from Joel and the relationship that this work has with 3GPP. The points from Jeff still need to be finalized. We have not closed all of them. And once we have closed this, then hopefully we can move forward with this draft. So that's all. Many thanks to everyone who has contributed. And I see Jeff on the queue.
Yeah. So Pablo, I think if you go back to the previous 2 slides, one of the slides here.
Which one?
So yeah, let's start here. Let's stay here. So out of these four, comments, like, reviewer comments, which are blocking comments versus which are like more editorial in nature?
So I think the Dirk, John, and Sridhar, they have been already closed. I think Joel comment is blocking, well, in the sense that it needs to, we need to have discussion, perhaps, I don't know if it's at working group level or whether it should happen at a higher level, to see what is the relationship of this work with 3GPP. So I believe that from this slide, only Joel's point is the one that needs special attention.
Okay, but so, how do you, what are the next steps? Like, we want to, see some convergence on this, right? So, did you guys give up on this, or are you guys still talking?
I think we need to have a further discussion. I think it would be interesting to get the point of view of more working group participants, or if not, at least the point of view of the ADs. Okay. I think there are several options to resolve this, but still, I think we need to hear a bit more voices.
So, well, I believe Joel is on the call meeting. Joel is in the meeting. Joel, from your point of view, will you be able to summarize your key blocking comments and post it the working group? That way, because if you guys are not able to resolve it, we'd like to get, more broader feedback and find some consensus there. So would you be able to, yeah, please speak up.
I sent them to the list. I'll assume that the archive pointer is the right one, but I'll restate them. I mean, Satoru asked to talk to me as an author. I did so. I restated them there. This document has 4 alternatives it spells out. 3 of them change the behavior of the Gnode B and or the UPF. That's the domain of 3GPP. One of them says use SRv6 as tunnels to connect the Gnode B and UPF, carrying the GTP, etc., and so forth, as we do with tunnels. Hey, tunnels I got no problem with. That's absolutely valid. You want to describe that, go ahead. But the other 3 cases are changing interfaces that are standardized by 3GPP. And that is not the IETF's business. We expect folks to respect the IP standardization we do, not to change IPv6, not to change MPLS. We had a major fight with ITUT to keep them from changing the way MPLS worked. So if we expect other people to respect our work, we owe it to them to respect their work. And my understanding of our processes are we don't go redefining other people's architectures. DMM can define alternative architectures completely, not saying it's redefining 3GPP, different topic. If you want to define a whole mobility architecture using mobile IP, we did that. There's probably room to refine it. That's our business. But we can't go redefining 3GPP. I've been very clear on that with the ADs, with the authors, with the working group. I don't know what to say beyond that.
Joel, just one comment, if I may. I understand your point. However, I believe at the beginning of this document, we have particularly written in the draft, and I quote, the user plane describing this document does not depend on any specific architecture. And so basically what we are meaning with this text is that we are not redefining what 3GPP is doing. We are not redefining 3GPP interfaces.
You say that, but it isn't, but then the document does redefine it. Saying it doesn't make it true. The document redefines the behavior of Gnode Bs and UPFs as to how they send and receive IP packets. That's changing 3GPP specifications.
So got it, Joel. Pablo, I think
that's what you asked. Yeah. That's why I made sure I was here for this, so I could tell you where I'm coming from. You guys, you particularly as chair, since Satoru is a co-author, have to deal with what do you want to do with it.
No, I'll just, I think the others in the queue, but I'll just make one comment here. Yes, in principle, I completely agree with your view, Joel. It's not our business to change the 3GPP architecture. However, we can define alternative interfaces. Like SRv6N3, SRv6N9, these are all the options. I think we have to absolutely make sure, we are not saying, 3GPP says something and IETF says, by the way, no, we do it differently. That's absolutely not the intent. And from what I understand, even the authors are not saying that, but let's see, where the confusion is, how to resolve that. But in principle, I agree with your comments, Joel. We'll let others speak up in the queue. Yeah. Zhang.
So I show up as Zhao Hui, but I am the Jeffrey who has been making all those email exchanges with Pablo.
Hey, Jeffrey.
So yeah, hi. About the relationship with 3GPP, my thinking is that if we are not changing the N2, N4 signaling, and as long as from the rest of the 3GPP the mobile system point of view, that the GNode B and UPF, they are taking the N2, N4 signaling and to send traffic, then as long as the boxes, the GNode B or UPF, they can talk to each other in a particular deployment scenario, that should be fine. That's why while I share the concern with the competition with stepping onto 3GPP's toes, that's why I have even though I have that concern, I still have been making all those comments to work on the technical and editorial improvements of the document. So I think the important thing here is that we do not change 3GPP architecture. We do not change 3GPP signaling. And then for a particular operator, if they want to deploy SRv6 tunnel, as long as they can ensure the interoperability based on N2, N4 signaling, that should be fine. Now, going back to the technical and editorial comments, there were 2 email threads outstanding earlier. I sent a response on one of the threads before the meeting. There is another one I haven't replied yet. I think we have resolved pretty much the major technical issues. There is one issue remaining that I think is good to point out the option of doing the drop-in mode without using the special drop-in end behavior. I think we can still continue that discussion. And then another major editorial point is that I still think it's good and it's better to use U1 : TEID instead of using the 2001 blah blah blah, that address, because what we are doing here is indeed encoding the TEID in the IPv6 address. It's better to get to that point so that everybody understands what it is. A lot of confusion actually comes from the fact that we're not using the U1 : TEID. So moving away from that is actually make it worse. So those are my comments here.
So first thing, Jeffrey, I saw lots of postings from you. I appreciate that. You did a very thorough review. This is really what is needed. I absolutely, thank you for that. It's very much appreciated. And I think, yeah, please work with the authors and let's close the remaining open issues so that we can move forward. Jeffrey. All right. Eric.
I just wanted to understand whether or not the 3 examples that Joel's concerned about are still normative. It seems to be from the chat that they're still listed as being normative, and I'm wondering why they need to be normative. Can they be an example of what somebody who wanted to do something different in an appendix? Would that be satisfactory? I mean, people who are going to do it are going to do it anyway. Does it need to be a normative part of an IETF document? I don't know if that ameliorates the situation.
Eric, I had some discussion with Satoru-san on this. Maybe I'll let Satoru-san, Pablo speak on their current views.
So, Eric, I think the core of this document, or really what should be standardized, is section 6, if I'm not mistaken. That is where we are actually defining the SRV6 segment endpoint behaviors that we
Correct.
need for ability. The section 5, which it is explaining the deployment scenarios, to me, honestly, it is not normative, I would say. I mean, to me, the normative piece is the behaviors. That is what we need to standardize. How an operator is going to deploy this, we are proposing 3 behaviors, well, 3 modes, well, 4 modes in the draft, but actually an operator might decide to do even something different from this. So to me, as long as we standardize the behaviors, we are good. Section number 5 does not need to be normative, in my view.
So would it, I don't know if Joe's still in this session or if he's moved on to other sessions, but
Still there.
would it suffice to state clearly that the examples given are non-normative and they are explicitly for folks who want to deviate from the 3GP architecture in this way? I agree that section 6 is what you want to publish, but if we can't find a way to get around some of the issues in section 5, then the whole of the document is held up, right? So maybe
I'd have
Joel
to
has
see
any-
text to know. There might
Sure.
be a path down there. It doesn't seem likely, but more unlikely things have come to pass. So there may be a path like that.
All right. Well, maybe I'll take a stab at sending some text then, I guess. How about that? Put my text where my mouth is.
Sure, Eric.
Thanks.
That would work. Yeah. Any other comments? I think, yeah, just moving on. I think, Pablo, if you can give another few more minutes on the other comments, just please go back to the other slide, please. So, okay, we talked about Joel's comments, we talked about Jeffrey's comments, the others, Sridhar's, I think X2 and F1U, that's not in scope. I agree with you. Right, what else is remaining, Pablo?
So from this slide, nothing else. And the rest of the comments are the ones from Jeff. And I think Jeff summarized quite well the outstanding points.
Very good. So let's please work offline with all of these reviewers, and please try to, like I said, we'd like to see, we want to issue again a short LC again in January. So please help us make that happen. Yeah.
Okay,
All
thank you very much.
Thank you, Pablo, and all the others. Appreciate it. And one other final presentation, last presentation. This is a new document that Satoru has published. Satoru-san, please thank you introduce the topic.
Let me share my
You're on
screen.
mute. Oh yeah, I can hear you now.
Can you see my screen?
Yes.
This is Satoru from SoftBank, Chair Harthoff. Today I present a service mobile user plane, MUP architecture for DMM. Presenter me, Satoru, on behalf of both Horiba-san, Kan-san, Kawakami-san from SoftBank, Tetsuya-san, Kei-san from Marcus, Mia-san, Teppei-san, Pablo from Cisco, Dan from Bell Canada, Shai and Israel from Qualcomm, Ashutosh and Kumarash from Intel. So almost all contents be available on the draft, the first submit, actually we explain the very deep concept of the architecture by text. But second submit, 01 version, today I submit, explain illustration. So sorry for the submission right before the meeting, but I think it'd be helpful to understand the architecture, how it works. Today I present using PowerPoint slide with the picture. So you can see the picture for the for example, the deployment of the 3GPP 5G network using the UPF base station Geno B here and the DN on the right. In between them, the network exists to provide IP connectivity for the interface defined in the 3GPP. You can see N3 network here and the N6 network here. That's a typical picture to show the 3GPP 5G user plane architecture. Okay. Now, this is an example of how implementation for 5G user plane on SR underlay. Many people talk about the SR segment routing is an underlay for the 3GPP mobile user plane. So this is one example. One operator can deploy a 3GPP network to provide IP connectivity. Do this. So one of the SR network consists of the many of the SR-based node, accommodate the above, for example, for N3 LAN and to connect access point, Geno B, and N3 UPF both to communicate with the base station. And on the other side, N6 UPF both connected to the UPF N6 interface, then provide connectivity to DN through the N6 DN both. That's one of the example how to deploy 5G network on top of the SR network. Okay. So when we see this picture, we can imagine how the packet goes through. So this way, the packet goes through the base station access network from and to the UPF. Then UPF process the packet, then forward the packet to the SR network for the packet to the DN, and vice versa. So even the 3GPP network deploy one single SR network, the packet be terminated once or twice at the point of the anchor. That's one of the example of the deployment for 5G network on top of the SR network. Okay. So now, here we are proposing SR with MUP architecture. In that architecture, we can see the data path for 5G user plane. Nothing changed on the 3GPP architecture, but the SR network can forward the packet, go through the N3 and N6 directory. This is the one of the solution to provide optimized way, how to optimize the path for the user plane to guarantee the minimum latency and as a future of the segment routing for traffic engineering and slicing be available for the user plane path. So this slide shows the SRP's mobile user plane architecture overview. On left side, you can see the control plane. Control plane consists of the MEP controller and MEP gateway and MEP PE. BGP is a protocol adopted in this architecture document, but not limited to. In the control plane side, so discovery route exchange between the gateway and the PE for the MEP segment. And MEP controller transforms the session info received from the mobility management system, 3GPP 5GC, for example, or PMIP. MEP controller transforms the session to the route. The one route is the PE for the terminal prefix. The other one is the UPF endpoint route to gateway. You can see the detail in the draft. On right side, the data plane CGPP is, for example, SR network have a gateway and a PE. But other SR nodes require to connect the CGPP entity UPF to keep the CGPP architecture as it is. So in the MEP gateway, this picture, there's two buff configured. One is N3 RAM for the G node B. Another is DN to import the DN route. On MEPP side, the P hosts the above for N6DN. That's the overview for the architecture on both of the control plane and data plane. Control plane protocol adopt BGP, but not limited to, and data plane picture, just example for 5 using CPP term, but not limited to. So let's try to explain some use case, which is a new content on the latest version described in the illustration section. Please find the detail in that the text in the draft. I will show the picture to explain the illustration using this slide. So the how the iService MEP provides optimized paths for each of the distributed cloud and MEC side. That's the assumption for this use case. So on the left side, you can see the green MEP gateway and PE. This SR node hosts the both functionality of the MEP. The N3 RAM buff accommodates the G node B with the B/B prefix, and the other buff for N6DN to accommodate the DN site, which have the E/E prefix. The G node B provides the connectivity to UE for prefix U/U. That's the condition of the access side for the MEP gateway and PE. On the left side, MEPP accommodate N6DN buff. For DN1 -W for the W/W prefix. On the bottom side, the UPF connected to SR node S2 with the two buff. One is N3 UPF, another is N6 buff to provide connectivity to the both N3 and N6. Nothing changed from the previous slide on this part. Here, on top of the SR network, MEP controller exists. The MEP controller transforms the session information to the route. You can see the right hand MEP controller advertise UE route for the DL path, downlink path. Another route advertised to MEP gateway is the UPF route. UPF route means the endpoints of the mobile user plane. It works for the uplink path. It's imported in the N3 RAM buff. The another UE route advertised and imported to the buff in MEP PE on S1, same node of the MEP gateway. The N6DN buff imports the UE route as well. So the connectivity between the UE and DN side E/E be provided. And also the connectivity between the UE and DN sites W/W also be provided. Not to mention DN site DN1-E and DN1-W can communicate to each other. It's not depends on the MEP architecture. It's just normal SR-based VPN feature. Okay. Next slide. This picture shows the equivalent network model using the CPP network architecture model. In that architecture, to make sure the equivalent network for previous slide, we have to deploy the two UPF on each of the side. In between, the N69 exists. The left UPF accommodate DN through the N6 network. On the other UPF, accommodate another DN through another N6 DN. That's the equivalent network model to previous slide in CGPP model. Here you can see the use case, second use case. Actually, it's same use case, but the H site exists another PE. I mean, so multiple DN site supported by multiple SR node. In this case, MEP gateway doesn't need to import UE route in the N6DN buff because it just only provides the uplink path in the buff. Return path is the provided by service mobile user plane function. Not depends on the buff on N6DN. The configuration is almost same on MEPP in S3, but in this case, S4 appears to accommodate the edge side DN E/E. For that configuration, MEP controller advertise the UE route to N6DN buff on S3 and L4, but not needed to the S1 buff. And MEP controller also advertise EP route to gateway to be imported to the N3 RAM buff. The route between the N6DN in each SR node imported and exported each other to make sure the uplink path. That shows the another deployment case for to host the edge site. The edge site exists on the additional SR node. That's different from the previous case. In this case, there's no need to import the UE route in MEP gateway, so it's the MEP gateway deployment be simple and not to import much of the UE route into the above. That's helpful for make sure the scalability. So equivalent network model using the CGPP architecture model, architecture picture. This use case also need 2 UPF for each of the DN side. N9 between UPF, N3 network exists between the G node B and UPF on left side and right side. 2 N6 network exists to support the DM side, W/W and E/E from each of the UPF. That's the equivalent network model. So that's a brief explain how the service MEP network architecture works. For example, using CPP network model. This is not to intend to change any of the another SDO specification or architecture model. Just to respond to fulfill the requirement for the DMM using the segment routing V6 from the mobile user plane aspect. All of the background and what's the requirement certified in DMM is already described in the introduction section in the draft. So please read it. So after you read the document, I'm really happy if you have any interest. And if the working group in favor, I'd like to ask the working group adoption. That's all my side, my presentation.
Thank you, Satoru-san. So a couple of comments, I think, before I ask the working group. So can we say that this scope is strictly on N6? The steering is more from the data network. Did I get that? Is my understanding correct? The steering is more on the N6 rather than on the core network interfaces, or N3 or N1. Would you agree with that?
I don't think we have appropriate the term defined in CPP because it's not CPP architecture. This is the IETF architecture. One of the architecture we define for mobile user plane.
Right.
But yes, the GTP is assumed to terminate on the gateway. After that, the inner packet handled by SR network. just to when the session information come from the mobile mobility management system. It's totally depends on the how what's the operator, what's the other SEO architecture integrate this MEP architecture. The service MEP just provides the interface for the user plane packet, user plane traffic to be handled.
Okay. So 3GPP does not recognize anything on the north of the UPF around N6, right? They don't recognize any node, right?
Yeah.
That is
nothing changed on 3GPP side.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. That's
Keep
good.
it as
So,
it is.
right, right. So there is the related two other documents. The MFA document that I worked on. For some reason, I did not follow up on that. Right. It's also about steering. Right. It's like anchorless mobility. How do you steer directly more on a edge router? Or right. That's one draft. I think I'd like to ask the relation, like the level of overlap with that and this, and also Marco's other draft overall. We discussed on defining something on N6 steering. The idea of N6 steering, which 3GPP does not want to do. They're very clear. We will not recognize anything on the north of UPF. Right? It perfectly falls in in our scope. But those two documents, the relation to this. Any comments on that, Satoru-san?
Yeah, I really like MFA idea, and I really like the NC mobility idea from Marco. So but somehow those two drafts haven't been maintained. But while I work on the service mobile user plane, deployed a service network in my employer's network. That's the my latest proposal to provide optimized password to fulfill the DMM requirement.
Okay.
So I think the MFA supposed to use the FPC, but also the this architecture can adopt FPC as a northbound of the MUP controller, but not too limited to. Nowadays, we have a bunch of the candidates using the open source. Anything possible, gRPC based transaction.
I think FPC is one interface between the controller and the data plane element, but yeah, like you said, there could be alternative interfaces. I think these work can be neutral to this. I think in my opinion, this as an individual IC, I think this has value, but let's see what others think. Let's collect some feedback. If anybody has read the document, any questions, comments? This is not a working group document. This is just an individual submission at this point. But I think let's, if anybody has any questions, comments, please speak up.
I see some people in the queue. John?
Let me see. Oops, I'm missing. Sorry. John, please go ahead. John, Hanu. Yeah, John. Let's start with John.
Long time no see. Are you meeting? You meet
I
it,
can't hear
right?
you, John. John, you're on mute. John, you're on mute.
Hi, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, sorry for that. My question is more for clarification. I haven't read the document, so clarify that. But in the presentation, I got the feeling that you're steering both N3 and N6 somehow, because that's what makes it optimal. So, I mean, even that's fine. But my question is more like, if that is the case, what happens to the functions on the UPF, like charging or other things? Charging, of course, but also other access control aspects like I saw that it was first single DNN, but if there are multiple DNNs or slicing or other cures, enforcements, all of that, those are all questions. But I'm making the assumption that you're steering both N3 and N6. So if you could clarify that first. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, in the 3P point of view, it will be yes or no. But
That's okay.
let's mention that the other functionality of the process in the UPF. Currently, our architecture is just to fulfill the DMM requirement as a basement. Okay, so I'm really happy to work to support other functionality if any people interested
I
in.
suppose this may have
I'm
its
really happy
uses.
to work
I
with.
was thinking more like, it may be a private network or something like that. So it's a single DNN, factory or whatever, something of that sort. But and then the questions are about access control and other things like that. Is that going to be in some other?
Access control should be control on the control plane on session management side. The MEP network just follow the decision, what the decision made in the mobility management system.
Okay.
MEP mobile user plane doesn't have any intent because just to provide the DMM requirement satisfied.
Okay, I think I understand.
And also this picture shows only one DNN, but multiple sites. You mean one single DNN, but multiple D9.
Okay. Thank you.
That's what I try to explain. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, John. Hanu, long time.
Hello, everybody. Yeah, I have read the document, not the latest, but the 0.0 version. I noticed that you have now provided the illustration. I have a question about this the session information, what you are mentioning there on chapter 6, where you are carrying the session information from the control gateways, and in that interface, as I have understood, also from the response what you gave in the mailing list, that you are applying routing protocols, irrespective which routing protocol it is, but particularly if you consider the example BGP protocol. I'm curious about would the routing protocol be sufficiently reactive to carrying session information, because that's changing. That's quite rapidly changing. It's not like a prefix. It's more of transaction type of information, as we have seen from many alternative mobility protocols. And second question related to this reactiveness consideration is the scalability. Do you think that this using single earpiece is scaling enough to the scale of mobile networks, or would you need to have multiple parallel calls?
I couldn't catch what exactly
Yeah.
your question is. So
let me clarify.
question.
Yeah,
okay.
Let me clarify if I may. Sorry. The point is, because you're adding individual routes, what Hanu is saying, will you be able to scale? Because when you do steering at a session level, you're almost like in one sense, it's like a host route, right? But this is steering, but I think Hanu's question is, will the system scale? Hanu, did I get that right?
And then how fast you are reacting, propagating the routing table length.
Okay, thank you very much. I have the same question to the 5G interface SDI, because they adopt the REST and the post and the callback, how react immediately. But we actually not define the actual transport protocol for the northbound API and MEP controller, as well as the southbound with the controller. Now we adopt the BGP, but not limited to. But at least the BGP, I have to admit, the BGP running on the TCP. TCP has a headline bottleneck, I have to admit, but the rest as well. And also nowadays BGP carries the millions route inside but outside of the network. So that's the I have no idea how to compare the scalability, which session based or routing based scale or not. That's my answer this time. Sorry, I haven't exact number to answer to you right now.
Okay, maybe that's something to consider later on. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Hanu. I think that's a good comment. Pianji.
Chucky, can you hear me?
Sorry, yeah,
yep.
Please.
Oh,
sorry.
yeah. Okay. I have some question. I didn't spend the whole time watching your video, but I went through your slide, and in a couple of them, you mentioned about the N9 interfaces in N9 interface, but without specifying anything about like VRF or those type of things. So how are you going to handle like you have more than one UPF with N9 interface in between? That's the first question. And then depending on that, I have another question.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much. To focus on the one single question. If I'm understand your question correctly, I think we don't need to deploy N9 in the SR network because this case just one UPF exists, so there's no need to deploy N9. But if we see the same capability to provide two sides of the one single DEN, we need two UPF. That's our assumption. So then we put N9 in the middle of the path of the UPF, two UPF.
Okay.
Did I answer correctly for your question?
Yes. Also, in that case, are you going to configure the VIF on the N9 interface?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
This case is don't need to configure the N9, but if you follow this configuration, you may need to configure N9 bar.
Okay.
But that's not our architecture.
Okay, sure, no problem. The things like the follow-on question is regarding something being discussed in 3GPP SA2 about the multicast part. Probably you have heard there's like MBUPF that be introduced, and then on one side using N9 toward the UPF, at the other side N6 toward the EDD. And then because of some limitation or restriction on the GNOB side, so there might be point-to-point or point-to-multipoint. So for the MBUPF, it's going to have N9 toward the UPF, and then it can provide another N3 directly toward the GNOB. So basically, from the MBUPF, you're going to have two passes. Yeah, I don't know how it's going to fit into this architecture. At least I haven't seen it from your slides.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. But actually, we didn't care the multicast service right now. I think the MBS service is the new service appeared recently in the CPP. It's also already exists in the 4G. But I will study for that service. But currently, we didn't see that service in our architecture. I have to admit.
Okay, sure.
So Denji, is that you're referring to the EMBMS architecture?
Say it's a new that being introduced in SA2 It's like a 5G MBS. So I think the work, I think the phase 2 has been done. It's almost there. So yeah, there's
Okay,
I think
I will
there
catch up.
yeah phase 3 for the release 18 probably, but that being planned right now. So.
Okay. That's a good comment. I think authors should review that.
Good. Thank you very much. Really helpful.
Sure.
Jeffrey.
Yes, I could actually offer a guess answer for the N9 question that from Tianji. To me, that's in IETF terms that N9, the box that does N9 mapping there could be viewed as doing inter-AS option B, where you just do label switching, or here is not label switching, but SR-V6 mapping and behavior that's Mashima-san has already specified in the other draft we were talking about earlier. Just a guess.
Inter-AS option B between the UPF and some PE router.
Inter-AS option B does not require VRF. Right?
Okay. Okay. All right. Thank you, Jeffrey. Any other questions, comments? All right. If there are no other comments, I'll leave this topic here. Thank you, Satoru-san. I think again, working group, please review this document. I think post your comments. If there is interest, we'll discuss on the next steps. But right now, there's an ID individual contribution with no working group status. Any other, before we are done with all our presentations, again, as we talked about number of things, action items on the individual IDs from authors and also from the working group. After this meeting, we are going to send the notes that Pablo has captured. We'll take it from there. Any other final comments, Eric, from your side? Comments, feedback, anything you'd like to say?
Nothing. Assuming you meant this, Eric.
Yeah, Eric. Yeah. Other Eric, I don't bother him unless there is an EDR.
Nothing for me. I think I'll need to absorb this presentation. I'm trying to understand how it does not create an alternate architecture. Although I understand that that's the argument that's trying to be made. But thank you for all of the work.
With that, we close this session. Thank you so much. Thanks, everybody. Yeah. Bye.
Thank you. See you in Bangkok.
Oh, finally. Yeah.
Hopefully.
Yeah. Hopefully. Thank you so much.
Bye.